Hello, my friends, I am your old friend, the boss. Welcome to Boss Economics World. Let's get straight to the point. Over the weekend, the global financial markets took another rollercoaster ride, didn't they? One moment we were staring into the abyss of a full-blown trade war, with stocks, oil, and even your precious crypto coins plunging like a lead balloon. The next, a few carefully crafted social media posts and TV interviews later, and futures are bouncing back like they've just had a shot of adrenaline. What happened? Well, our old friend Donald Trump and his administration put on another masterclass in geopolitical theater. On Friday, it was fire and fury, 100% tariffs. Software restrictions. We'll ground their planes. The markets panicked. By Sunday, the tone had shifted. Trump was on Truth Social playing the benevolent leader, don't worry about China. President Xi just had a bad moment. The USA wants to help China, not hurt it. Vice President J.D. Vance was on Fox News talking about a delicate dance. So, the question is, what is really going on here? Is this the prelude to a catastrophic economic decoupling, a final showdown between the two global superpowers? Or is it just another episode of a long-running reality TV show, designed to spook the markets and secure a better negotiating position? Let's not talk nonsense. Today, we're going to peel back the layers of this onion, from the surface-level political posturing to the deep, structural economic conflicts underneath. We'll analyze the so-called leverage each side claims to have, and I'll give you my take on where this is all heading. For my friends who are ordinary investors and for you professionals in the trenches of finance, understanding the real game behind the curtain is the only way to navigate this chaos. First, let's look at the surface, the performance art that politicians present to the world. What we saw this weekend was a classic good cop, bad cop routine. The only twist? Donald Trump was playing both roles himself. The bad cop Trump on Friday was pure brute force. The threat of 100% tariffs isn't a negotiation tactic, it's a declaration of economic war. It's a move designed to create maximum fear and uncertainty. He coupled this with threats to restrict software exports and aircraft parts, a direct shot at China's high-tech ambitions and its burgeoning aviation industry. The message was clear: we can inflict immense pain, and we are willing to do it. The good cop Trump on Sunday was a completely different character. The post on Truth Social is a masterpiece of political doublespeak. Let's break it down. Don't worry about China, it will all be fine. This is directed squarely at Wall Street. It's Trump the market whisperer, trying to calm the horses he himself spooked just 48 hours earlier. Highly respected President Xi just had a bad moment. This is incredibly patronizing, framing the leader of the world's second-largest economy as a temperamental child. It's a way of asserting dominance while offering a face-saving off-ramp. The USA wants to help China, not hurt it. This is perhaps the most cynical line of all. After threatening to cripple their economy, this statement is the equivalent of a mob boss saying, "Nice little economy you've got there. It would be a shame if something happened to it." Then you have the supporting cast. J.D. Vance on Fox News talking about a delicate dance and America having far more cards is the textbook definition of coercive diplomacy. The logic is simple: we are pointing a cannon at your head, but we are hoping you will be reasonable so we don't have to pull the trigger. It's a threat wrapped in the language of negotiation. And China's response? It was equally predictable. The Commerce Ministry's statement, threatening with high tariffs at every turn is not the right way and China will resolutely take corresponding measures, is the standard rhetoric of a power that wants to project strength but knows it is in a difficult position. It's the diplomatic equivalent of saying, "Don't push me, because you won't like what happens when I'm pushed." The November 1st deadline is the final piece of the theatrical puzzle. When Trump says, "For me, November 1st is an eternity," he's not talking about his perception of time. He's a real estate negotiator at heart. He's creating an artificial, high-pressure deadline to force the other side's hand, while simultaneously giving markets a 3-week window to calm down, just as his trade representative Jameson Greer suggested. So, what does this all mean on the surface? It means that what we are witnessing is not a straightforward path to war. It's a high-stakes poker game where both sides are bluffing, raising the stakes, and sending contradictory signals to confuse their opponent and manipulate market sentiment. The words are cheap. The real story lies in the fundamental economic realities that are forcing this confrontation. Now, let's move from the surface to the core. To understand this conflict, you have to realize that the era of simple tariff disputes over soybeans and steel is long gone. That was Trade War 1.0. Welcome to Trade War 2.0, a much more dangerous and fundamental struggle fought on 3 key battlegrounds: technology, supply chains, and financial hegemony. The real catalyst for this recent flare-up wasn't a tariff, it was China's announcement of new export controls on rare earths. This is a seismic shift in the nature of the conflict. For years, the US has used its control over key technologies, particularly in semiconductors, as its primary weapon. The Entity Lists, the CHIPS Act of 2022, and restrictions on companies like Huawei were all designed to kneecap China's technological ascent. The US controlled the brain of the global tech industry. Now, in 2025, China is finally hitting back where it has a dominant position: the blood of the modern economy, critical minerals and processed materials. Let's look at the data, because the numbers are staggering. Despite years of talk about diversification, China's grip on the supply chain for critical minerals has only tightened. As of Q3 2025, China still controls over 90% of the world's rare earth magnet production, which is essential for everything from F-35 fighter jets to Ford's electric Mustang Mach-E and the wind turbines powering our green transition. The much-touted Mountain Pass mine in California? It still ships most of its concentrated ore to China for the complex and environmentally costly processing stage. The US has no end-to-end domestic supply chain. This isn't just about rare earths anymore. It's about gallium, germanium, graphite, and a dozen other minerals. A recent report from the Global Strategic Metals Institute estimates that a full-scale Chinese export ban on these processed materials could halt over 40% of global EV battery production and 60% of advanced solar panel manufacturing within 6 months. When China flexes this muscle, it's not just a trade move, it's a direct threat to America's national security and its green energy ambitions. This is why Trump's reaction was so severe, restricting US software and aircraft parts. He is responding to a supply chain attack with a technology attack. This is tit-for-tat escalation at the very heart of the 21st century economy. The game has changed from a monetary dispute to a physical, resource-based one. J.D. Vance claims the US has far more cards. This is a dangerously simplistic view that echoes the thinking from 2018. The balance of power in 2025 is far more nuanced. America's perceived leverage. 1. The almighty dollar. The US dollar is still the world's reserve currency. The ability to sanction nations out of the SWIFT system is a financial nuclear option. 2. Technological supremacy. The US still leads in foundational technologies like semiconductor design, operating systems, and advanced aerospace. 3. The consumer market. The US remains the world's largest and most lucrative consumer market. Being cut off from it is painful for any export-oriented economy. China's underestimated leverage. 1. Supply chain dominance. As we just discussed, China is the world's factory and holds the keys to many critical industrial inputs. 2. The creditor nation. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China is now the largest single creditor to a vast swath of developing nations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This gives it immense diplomatic and political clout that can be used to counter US influence. 3. A fraying dollar hegemony. While the dollar is still king, its armor is showing cracks. The weaponization of the dollar against Russia in 2022 was a wake-up call for many nations. Look at the data. The BRICS Plus bloc has been actively building alternative payment systems. The volume of trade settled in Chinese yuan via the cross-border interbank payment system has grown by over 300% since early 2023. Saudi Arabia is now selling a portion of its oil to China in yuan. These are not just symbolic moves, they are the early tremors of a potential seismic shift in the global financial architecture. The US leverage here is still massive, but it is no longer absolute. The logic is very simple. The US can hurt China's ability to earn money and acquire high-tech goods. China can hurt America's ability to build things, from iPhones to electric cars. It's a standoff between the world's financier/innovator and the world's manufacturer/resource controller. To say one side has far more cards is to fundamentally misunderstand the nature of this symbiotic yet adversarial relationship. We cannot ignore the domestic politics driving this drama. Why is this flare-up happening in October 2025? For the Trump administration, the timing is perfect. With the 2026 midterm elections on the horizon, a tough stance on China is a guaranteed political winner with his base. It portrays him as a strong leader defending American jobs and security. Furthermore, if the domestic economy is showing signs of weakness, perhaps stubborn inflation or slowing growth, an external conflict is a convenient distraction. It allows the administration to blame Beijing for any economic turbulence. For President Xi, the calculus is similar. China's economy is facing immense structural headwinds. The property crisis that began with Evergrande continues to simmer, youth unemployment remains a persistent social challenge, and the transition from an investment-led to a consumption-led economy is proving difficult. By standing up to American bullying, the Chinese government can rally the population around the flag, stoking nationalism and deflecting criticism of its domestic economic management. The essence behind this is that both leaders are using this international conflict to consolidate power at home. This makes the situation both more predictable and more dangerous. So, where do we go from here? The Goldman Sachs note mentioned in the reports lays out two paths, a market-positive de-escalation or a negative outcome of all-out trade war. Let's call them the reality show ending and the apocalypse ending. Scenario A, the muddle through. This is the most likely scenario, as Goldman suggests. Both sides will pull back from the most extreme threats. Why? Because the economic consequences of a full-blown war are mutually assured destruction. A 100% tariff would be catastrophic. A 2024 study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics estimated that a full US-China decoupling could vaporize over $1.5 trillion in US market cap and trigger a deep global recession, potentially shrinking global GDP by 5%. Neither Trump nor Xi wants to preside over that kind of economic calamity. So, we will see a deal. It will likely involve China quietly easing its export controls and the US postponing or canceling the 100% tariffs. They might even offer a small token, like rolling back a few pre-existing tariffs, which would be the market-positive outcome. The markets will cheer, the politicians will declare victory, and we'll have an indefinite extension of the tariff escalation pause. The fundamental conflicts over tech and supply chains will remain unresolved, simmering beneath the surface until the next politically convenient moment for a flare-up. This is simply kicking the can down a very bumpy road. Scenario B, the final showdown. This is the black swan event where miscalculation and domestic political pressure lead one side to push too far. If China were to fully weaponize its control over rare earths, or if the US were to impose crippling financial sanctions on major Chinese banks, the situation could spiral into a genuine decoupling. In this scenario, supply chains would shatter. Inflation in the West would skyrocket as the cost of everything from electronics to building materials would soar. China's economy would face a massive demand shock, leading to widespread unemployment and social instability. This would be an economic earthquake on the scale of the 2008 financial crisis, or worse. While the probability is low, the high-impact nature of this outcome is precisely what keeps global markets on edge. Okay, let's summarize today's content. First, the weekend's dramatic headlines are primarily political theater. The tough talk and the soft talk are two sides of the same negotiating coin, designed to manipulate markets and pressure the opponent. Don't get caught up in the noise. Second, the real conflict has evolved. This is no longer just about tariffs. It's a deep, structural battle for control over the critical technologies and supply chains that will define the 21st century economy. China's use of rare earth export controls is a significant escalation that changes the rules of the game. Third, the idea of leverage is far more balanced than either side lets on. The US holds the financial and high-tech cards, while China holds the manufacturing and raw material cards. This creates a dangerous codependency, a form of economic mad that makes an all-out war unlikely, but not impossible. Finally, the most probable outcome is a temporary truce. A muddling through that solves none of the underlying issues but allows both leaders to save face and calm the markets for now. So, what should you do? For my friends in the markets, the lesson is clear: volatility is the new normal. The geopolitical risk premium is now a permanent feature of investing. Watch the actions, not the words. Look at capital flows, supply chain investment data, and patent filings, not presidential tweets. For everyone else, understand that this is the defining economic narrative of our time. This delicate dance is not a waltz, it's a knife fight in a phone booth. Grab your popcorn, because this show, The Great Decoupling, has many more seasons left to run. But remember, with each new season, the tickets for the global economy get more and more expensive. I am the boss. We see the world through the lens of economics. See you next time.